Assalamu alaikum and good morning, dear respected attendees. I, Amira Hussein Jassim, the host from the Teacher Training Institute. I'm pleased to welcome you to the 6th Arab Gulf Forum under the title Hybrid Learning, which comes in accordance with the rapid changes that sweeps the world and affects the educational process. We in the United Arab Emirates are blessed with wise leadership that has an incredible vision and prospect. So we are pleased to welcome from the Teacher Training Institute, Ms. Sonia Helena Bihamdouni, who joined the Expo School program after nearly 20 years in education in Canada and the UAE. She's here to give us a training session under the title Bringing Expo 2020 Dubai to Your E-Classroom. We are hoping that you participate with your input and questions through the chat feature. We, with the help of our guests, will respond to all your questions. The attendance link will be placed before the end of the session via the chat feature. Ms. Sonia Helena, you may start with the presentation, please.
Thank you, Ms. Noura. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to this online workshop for Expo 2020 Dubai, bringing Expo to your classroom. I'm going to be sharing my screen now. Great, thank you. This is a great privilege to be here with you this morning. A big thank you to the Ministry of Education and as well as the training team to have invited me here today. So as Ms. Noura said, I have been an educator for 20 years, nearly 20 years, and therefore understand the hard work that teachers put in to support their students' journey in education. So I joined the Expo School program last year, and although I find myself outside of the classrooms, away from the students, and away from the schools, I still hold a special place in my heart for the school community here in the UAE. So I'm very honored to join you here this morning to share the learning resources that we offer and that we have made easy for you to learn in your e-learning experience. So today's session will be broken into two different parts. The first one, I will be walking you through some important features of the learning resources. And in the second part, I will take you through our Expo School program award-winning website to explore the learning resources and show you a couple of ways to use the learning resources in your online lessons. At the end, we will have a Q&A session, and I will do my very best to answer all your questions. So for those of you who have been following the news, I'm sure that you've heard that Expo 2020 Dubai has been officially postponed for a year due to our current situation. So the new opening date is from October 1st, 2021, all the way through to March 31st, 2022, and will last an entire 6 months. So this postponement actually gives us more time to plan for an exciting event and actually have the whole world join us for this mega event. It's also going to give a chance to us at the Expo School program to actually prepare a whole extra academic year to engage with you in the school community. So every World Expo has a theme, and Expo 2020 Dubai's main theme is connecting minds and creating the future. So there are also 3 sub-themes to Expo 2020 Dubai. The first one is opportunity, which is unlocking potential within individuals and communities. The second sub-theme is mobility, which is about creating smarter movement of people, goods, data, and ideas. And the third sub-theme is sustainability, which is about living in balance with the world and preserving resources for future generations. So since 2016, the Expo School program has been engaging with the school community from both public and private schools across the UAE through a number of initiatives and programs. So we've had different initiatives such as the Expo Champions, the Expo Young Innovators, and the Expo Young Stars. So some of you might have had the opportunity to actually bring your students to the Expo 2020 Visitor Center and get a glimpse of what Expo is holding for them and for yourselves, of course. So we've been honored by the passion of the educational community who have expressed their interest in Expo 2020 and the Expo School program, and they were very, very grateful for that. So based on the feedback and a special interest that we've received from students, educators, and different stakeholders, we developed a number of outreach programs and initiatives to make sure that schools are a part of the journeys towards 2021, such as the ones that I mentioned earlier, Expo Champions, Expo Young Innovators, and the Expo Young Stars. So we're going to take a closer look at those, but you can also take a look at those on our website. Now, we've worked on developing special programs for educators that are specifically designed to allow teachers to engage with us even further and bring Expo 2020 into their classrooms, and now given the current situation for the e-learning experience. So, of course, the first one we had was the teacher development workshops, but the second initiative for educators have been the Expo Learning Resources. They are developed by the educational team at the Expo School program. These learning resources encourage creativity, collaboration, and innovation skills that every curriculum is gearing up towards in the 21st century. So the Expo Learning Resources cover more than 60 different topics. And what makes them extra special is that they have been prepared and inspired by 74 teachers who volunteered to work with us to bring these ideas together and inspire us to develop these resources, and of course have relevancy to what is being taught in the UAE schools. These learning resources also cover 8 different subject areas, and they have been designed to easily integrate into your curriculum and topics covered in the syllabus. So each learning resource basically comes with a timed lesson plan, handouts, activities, projects, and a beautiful PowerPoint presentation that can easily be edited to your students' needs, of course, and requirements. So it's a full package that cannot actually be looked over. As I've mentioned earlier, that the learning resources cover topics related to Expo's sub-themes: opportunity, mobility, and sustainability. In today's session, we're going to look into the sustainability sub-theme and topics that go under sustainability. Now, this is just an example that we have put in together to give you an idea of actually what is in the learning resources. The learning resources cater to all age groups, so you'll find resources per level, whether it's primary, middle, secondary, cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3, and for every grade level, and there are at least 5 lessons per theme. So for primary level or cycle 1 teachers, you can explore different lessons. For example, you can introduce the coral reefs lesson, where you share the story of coral reefs and you get your students to create a beautiful coral reef ecosystem model using recycled material. For middle school teachers or cycle 2 teachers, we have lessons, for example, called Closing the Plastic Loop. And this is ways to learn on how to reduce our dependency on plastic and encourage students to take an active role in their communities and at school and be agents of change during comics, which is a tool and it's an important tool among this age group. So there are different activities that are actually catered to different age groups, which are appropriate as well, but we'll take a look at that in a minute. Now for secondary or for cycle 3 students, the example here we're showing is mapping the year 2100. And one of the lessons you may explore further with your students, and you can have them learn more about the environmental changes and use nature to inspire them to think about new designs and take on a futuristic approach in solving challenges. So you will notice as you explore the learning resources that the activities and projects actually get more complex, and they encourage students to use higher thinking skills. Now, the ways of using the learning resources, of course, there are many other, but these are the 3 different ways that we've come up with. And of course, if you have any other suggestions, please do let us know. So the first one is to actually use the learning resources as they are, as is. It's a very, very rich lesson plan. Many different stages of the lesson are presented, and it's entirely up to you as a teacher to use the entire lesson. Another feature or another way to use the learning resources is actually to choose 1 or 2 elements from the lesson, either from the PowerPoint as well or the activities. So you can actually extract information and use that parallel with your actual lesson. And the third way, which is actually the way we'll be looking at in the second part of today's session, is just to create a bespoke lesson, a lesson plan using different elements from the learning resources and kind of combine them into a lesson and couple that with an ongoing lesson that you may have. Now, and one last feature, the one, that we'll be looking at today is water from air. It's just an example that we've created a bespoke lesson to present to you today. And one more feature that might be useful to you is that the fact that these learning resources have subtopics within each lesson. And we'll see that in a minute. Now, the idea in each lesson plan, because they're so rich and it can cover different parts of your lesson, including enrichment topics, and they get your students to actually be motivated and explore further. So you can develop different projects around these. For example, the first one being the water cycle. So there are different elements of the water cycle. If you'd like to revisit this topic, it is a part of the lesson that we offer in Water from Air. The second one is the different sources of water that are here in the UAE, and get students thinking about where does water actually come from. Another one is the water tree at Expo 2020, which will be featured featured and showcased at the actual event, and gives you more information through a link which directs students and yourselves directly to the main Expo 2020 website. And the last one, for example, is how does nature get water from air? And this is actually the one that we will be looking at in a moment. So you can talk about different animals that are basically in the UAE, the fauna, the flora, and how they actually are in need of water, and how they actually survive with little or with much water. Now, in this part here, I will be taking you to our award-winning website, and I will explain to you further how to create a bespoke lesson from our learning resources. So here's the address or the link to the Schools Expo 2020 Dubai. And this is the main page for the school program. So as you see here on top, there are four different tabs. And as you can see, once you put your cursor on the initiatives for schools, you'll be presented with an array of different initiatives that we offer. The one we'll be focusing on today is the learning resources. So I'll just get to that page. Now on the right side here, it shows login. There's no need for any login. You can actually access the website from anywhere or any device, and it's actually open to the public. The website is also offered in Arabic, just in case you're interested. So here we are at the learning resources page. So as I scroll down, I'm actually presented with 4 different tabs, as you can see here. All, which is the ages 6 to 18, all age levels. Cycle 1, ages 6 to 10. Cycle 2, ages 11 to 15. And Cycle 3, ages 16 to 18. Now, on the bottom here, you have the different subject areas which are presented. And these are just basically the ones that we've created the different learning resources around. So if I'd like to filter my search around the subject that I'm teaching, I would just simply click on one of these and narrow down my search. Now, if I'm teaching Cycle 1, I would click on Cycle 1 and then choose my subject. So we'll come back to this in just a minute. So as I scroll down,
Miss Sonia, sorry for interruption, but I think you was trying to open something else, but I see your presentation.
Okay.
Your presentation is displayed. The one you are, discussing about, it's not.
Okay, it's not sharing.
Reflecting on the screen.
Okay,
it's
sorry
not reflecting. Yes, it's fine.
Okay. How about now?
Okay, just give me a second because, yeah, now it's great. Thank you.
Perfect, no problem. So I'll
that's
just
the page of the Expo, right? The learning resources of Expo.
Okay. That's correct. So this is the initial page. The link to the Expo School program is here. Okay. And once I'm here on this Expo School program page, there are 4 tabs here on top. The one that we're going to be focusing on today is initiatives for schools. So as you can see, all the different initiatives that are presented at Expo School program are here, but today's focus will be on the learning resources. So I'll click on that. And here's the main page. I was just explaining that there's no need for login, although it's there. And the website also comes in Arabic. So I'm just going to scroll down here and show you the 4 tabs I told you about, the different age groups, and the 8 different subject areas here presented. So before we come back to this part, and I'll do a little search with you, narrow it down to a specific age level and a subject, I'm just going to show you how the website is actually divided. So the first part, so there are 4 big ideas at Expo. The first one is, what is Expo? The next one is mobility. The next one is opportunity, and the last one, which we'll be looking at in a minute, is sustainability. So as you can see, there are quite a few learning resources, and they have all been categorized for each big idea or sub-theme, and very easy to navigate. So I'm going to go back to the top. If you have access to the website now as we speak, then please do access it so that we can do this together. I'm just going to get here to the top. Perfect. So today's example will be around Cycle 1. So we've decided to take Cycle 1 material, and I was just imagining myself being a science teacher. So what I'll do is click on primary, and I'm going here to the subject called science and click on that. So once I've done that, the search is actually being narrowed down to strictly all the resources that have science topics. So if I scroll down here for mobility, you can see here that there are different subjects, for example, artificial intelligence for wildlife, and you can see here the different subjects that it actually pertains to. Connecting things, Human 2050, and this is all for mobility and Journey to Space. So as you can see, it's been narrowed down to 4 learning resources. As I continue to scroll down, I get to opportunity, and I'm presented with 2 different learning resources, which have the topic science, as you can see here, and other subjects. Now, as I'm scrolling down, one we'll be looking at today is under sustainability, and of course there are quite a few, but the one we'll be looking at is water from air, which is this one. So each of these learning resources have been categorized with a title, with the actual age level, and each of the learning resources come here with a short description of the gist of the idea, the gist of the actual topic within that learning resource. Again, you will have the different subject areas which are related to science. And finally, here there are 2 different tabs. One is Quick View, one is Download. I'm just going to show you what Quick View says. And it basically gives you further information or deeper information as to what the learning objectives are for that specific lesson. So if you want to get an idea of what is in there, you would read these 2, 3, 4 different objectives and then know that it's time to download. Each of these learning resources come with a holistic aim, and all this information you see here is also included in the lesson plan. So you can either download the resources from the main page or from this page. So I'll just click on that and download the information. Now, while it's downloading, just a reminder that all the lessons actually do provide different links, which are actually a connecting link to the Expo 2020 Dubai. So I'll show you that example in a second. Now, as I mentioned earlier, each of the learning resources come with 3 different documents to help with the lesson. So one is a handout, a lesson plan, and a PowerPoint presentation. So I'll take you through the lesson plan and just give you an idea of what it looks like. So each lesson plan comes with a cover page and further information as to what is actually in there, as the same we saw for the first one on the website. Now, on the first page, you will always be presented with an Expo connection. It basically gives you an overview of what this lesson is actually connected to when it comes to different country pavilions, different innovative ideas that Expo will be showcasing. The holistic aim, which was on the main page as well, a summary of the lesson plan, the learning objectives, which can also be tweaked or modified depending on your students' needs, and we'll look in that in a second. And for every lesson plan, you will receive a list of different materials and resources required for the activities or mini projects that are within that lesson. So as I continue to scroll down the lesson plan, the stages of the lesson plan are stated here, and each of the stages of the lesson are presented with one big question, so that definitely you'll know when you're doing your research, you can actually determine whether that section or that subtopic is relevant to your lesson. So as you can see, each of these instructions or mini stages of the lesson come with the slide number as well as the amount of minutes that should be spent on it. Now, each of these lessons have been created for a 45-minute lesson. And as you can see, the instructions are there, how many minutes should be spent, and finally, a main activity, activity 1. Now, there are different activities. Some resources will have 1 or 2 activities. Other resources will have many more. So as you can see, water from air is here presented, and the different information and guidance to which slides you can present. Now, each of the resources or in the lesson plans, there are extension activities. So if you feel that you would like to take your students further or perhaps present them with an independent lesson, you can actually send this or create this with your students. As I mentioned earlier, each of the resources actually come with a link which takes you directly to the main Expo 2020 website. And as I mentioned earlier, the Expo 2020 Dubai Water Tree which is featured at Expo, will take you directly to the Czech Republic Pavilion and give you further information, or for your students to understand what they will be showcasing as innovative ideas during the event. At the end of each lesson plan is a plenary activity where students get the chance to present their ideas. So in this case, they have a mini project on water from air, which we'll be looking at in a couple of minutes. Every single lesson plan is presented with an evaluation grid or a rubric, which can actually be, of course, edited, modified, and changed according to your students' needs. But the ones that you see here are just strictly the objectives that are presented in this lesson. And finally, at the end, are the names of all the teachers who've inspired the ideas and to create these Expo 2020 learning resources. So a big thank you to all these teachers. Great, so now that we've taken a look at the lesson plan, I'll just take you to the PowerPoint presentation. And there's a reason for all this. Okay, I'll come back to sharing. Okay. Great. So each of these learning resources come with PowerPoint presentations and are ready. So as you can see, the lesson plan is very rich, has lots of information and extension activities for students. So these PowerPoint presentations are ready, and they actually offer different questions with a multiple choice tasks and with answers. So it actually encourages students to think further, and it gives you a short description as well. As you can see, there's lots of information. The colors are beautiful. Once again, this is Cycle 1 material. So of course, it's a little, I would say, more pleasant for the younger students to see. And for each of the slides or presentation that you have, there's extra information that can be given to the students. As I mentioned, the fauna, the flora, the animals, how can they survive with little water? And they give you pictures, images, questions, and additional information. Again, we're revisiting the water tree. And then there are big questions and other questions to get students to actually find solutions to the problems that we're facing with water. And of course, then the presentation, the project, which is offered to students, and 4 big questions. So I want you to remember these 4 questions here at the end of the presentation, and we'll come back to them in a moment. So this is what a PowerPoint presentation looks like. Now I'm going to show you, 1 second please, the handout. Okay, 1 second, it stopped sharing again. All right. Right, so once again, the handout is actually presented with different schemes to help the students. So if you're presenting this to students and you want them to do independent learning, you can actually send this to them. Now, I want everybody to remember that this is just an example that I'm showing you, but the same is applicable to Cycle 2 and Cycle 3 material. And of course, you have different handouts and information for your students and for their levels. So now that we've taken a look at the lesson plan, or I've showed you the lesson plan more or less with the different stages in a lesson, we've discussed that you can use the entire lesson plan on its own in one go, in one class, or in different classes. The second option is to just extract 1 or 2 elements. And the last one, which we're going to look at, is to basically present and create a bespoke lesson, which I will show you right now. So what I did, one second, I need to share it again. So what I basically did was I took a look at the lesson and I decided that I will create a mini lesson. So all I did was I extracted some information and I wanted to focus on water from air. Instead of a 45-minute lesson, I wanted to create something that was a bit shorter, a bit more parallel to what, for example, I was teaching in science. And so what I did was I went to the lesson plan and I extracted the different elements or parts of the lesson that I wanted to create. So as you can see, this is just an example of a bespoke lesson that I created with strictly 10 slides that I would present to my students, and I would let them go off and actually do the work on their own. So I haven't done anything else except copy pasted the information from the main lesson plan from our learning resources and just created my own lesson plan. Of course, for my guidance, for observation reasons, and of course to share with other teachers in the same or other cross-curricular subjects. So as you can see, each slide has a short description. I put the amount of minutes next to it. I took the main questions that we saw in the PowerPoint presentation. What can we use water for? So the idea here was I wanted the students to go back and revisit the water cycle, which they probably did in the academic year. But at the end of the lesson, I wanted them to actually rethink the water cycle in a more innovative and creative way, which will then bring them to water from air. How can you create water from air? How is that even possible? So I've put in all these questions. I thought about even having class discussions, or if I'm using a different platform, I can actually get students to go into different spaces and walk through the different questions and get them to brainstorm and then come back to the actual main platform and then share their answers. As you can see in slide 7, I included an Expo connection because I found that the Czech Republic pavilion actually does showcase some quite interesting inventions and creations for the future about how to preserve water and how to keep it. So I included the link, and I'll show you my PowerPoint presentation that I created for the students, and you can see. So all the information basically here is I didn't need to do much. All I did was read the information on the lesson plan, took down some notes on basically what most important parts I wanted to share with my students, and I wanted them to go further and actually go through the Expo 2020 main website and get further information for themselves. At the end, I also created a rubric. So how about I take you to that PowerPoint presentation and give you an idea of what it is I created. I will share my screen once again. Okay. Here we go. So this is the lesson that I created. Now, I didn't do anything different than what actually was from the main lesson plan. So I created my own objectives. And remember those 4 questions that were at the end of the PowerPoint presentation I showed you a few minutes ago? Well, I decided that those questions would actually be relevant to my lesson, to my e-lesson, and would actually get students to kind of think a bit further. So how to get water from air was basically the main idea here. To get them motivated with these questions. Where will the water go? How will it work? What will it be made of? And what will we use it for? So revisiting the water cycle, but then rethinking it in a further idea. So all I did was I went back to the main PowerPoint presentation from the learning resources, and I copy pasted these 3 main questions. Then let's revisit what is the word water cycle and basically kind of encourage a class discussion. So I decided to take this PowerPoint presentation, again, which I copy pasted from the main PowerPoint and put it here into my presentation. And I wanted students to think about the different animals that actually can live on less water. And the oryx and the camel actually represent the United Arab Emirates in so many ways, and I also wanted to integrate the heritage and culture of the United Arab Emirates into my classroom. And camels, of course, we see them as we're driving through across the Emirates, from Emirates to Emirate, but to get students to actually think, well, how do they actually live with less water? And the oryx, of course, they've probably seen them around, either in an Al Zoo or the Dubai Safari, and they can get familiar with it. But I wanted to take them actually further and think about how do they actually live with less water. So the information again was there. I decided to include it. Most students work parallel or together with their parents or their siblings, and I thought it would be a good idea to keep this information so that they can read it further together and actually be more motivated to know more about these animals. Now, remember I said that I included the link, direct link from the Czech Republic into my lesson plan, which I took from the main lesson plan. So I decided to keep it in. And to get the students kind of excited about what will be happening in Expo 2020. So all this information you see here, I copy pasted this from the main website. So I didn't really have much to do except, do some extra research and include this. So I decided to take it a step further so that I can actually extend my activity and get those students who actually need a challenge to do extra information. And I went to the main Czech Republic website and found all this information. So I'm just sharing it with my students and actually get them to do more research and find out more about what this country will be showcasing at the main event. I included this in my presentation to my students, of course, so that if I'm sending this presentation to them, they will have direct access to the link. And all this information you see here was straight copy pasted from the main learning resource lesson plan. Now, I took this question back in here, and of course I wanted to give other students who love insects and flora the opportunity to look beyond animals and think about how it really affects nature in general. So after all this, it's soon the end of my 20-minute lesson. I wanted to share with students now and get them to kind of be excited about now presenting this project. So the information or the tools that they actually need to make this project are in the lesson plan under the materials and resources required. So I didn't find that all the materials were suitable for my students for this lesson. So I decided to strictly extract and remove the different materials that would be relevant to them. So as you can see, the students will need these items. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen with you for a moment. And I'm going to show you what I would show my students as well. So I would tell my students that they need a Ziploc bag, Preferably not too big, not too small. Of course, if there's no Ziploc bag, they can also use any kind of sandwich bag or plastic bag. But what needs to, you need to be sure that this is sealed properly. So they're going to need different markers to decorate the bag, and I'll show you in a moment how. Probably some paint and some sticky tape as well, and I'll show you in a minute why. And most importantly, some blue food coloring, which is very important because the bag will be designed in a way that it will be nature-like. So students will understand that this is the water, and what they'd have to do is put the water in here in the bag to see the actual results. So it'd be nice for them to color their water blue. And finally, the most important is, of course, some water. So this is exactly what I would do up until this moment, share this lesson with my students, and then, of course, show them the material. Now, I'll take this further, and I will take you directly to my window and allow me to show you what I would show my students on the day of the project. So this is what it would look like. So the idea is to actually put the water bag on a sunny window and keep it there as long as they see results. And furthermore, I would ask students to actually record the making of their project and share with me what goes on further. So after this, I will tell the students to look at the water cycle bag on a daily basis. I'm sure some of them at this age will be super excited and they'll be looking at it every hour. I'll ask my students to keep track of the changes, either in a journal if some students need to practice their writing in English. So I would ask them to record this in a journal. It could also be typed, or they can record their voice notes. And I would actually parallel this with the English subject and ask students to practice their speaking skills or presentation skills. I would also ask students to snap short clips or take photographs of the making and the changes of the water cycle bag, because there will be changes. And the result is basically to actually see how the water transforms into air, from water into air, and it becomes water. They will also prepare a short presentation. And this, of course, is optional. It could be extended to students who are more comfortable with presenting, of course. So after all of this, and I've explained it to them and I've got them excited, I will, of course, give them other instructions by showing them all what they have. I will share a rubric or an evaluation grid with my students. So as you can see on the left side in the objectives, I've included the two objectives that I showed in the beginning. So another way to explain water from air, and also how to get water from air. So it's encouraging students to actually go through the project and see the results and share it and get them really motivated and excited. And the last objective is to present the ideas. So it really depends on how the students feel comfortable and how the e-learning experience is going. So if some students are physically in school, they can do their presentation in school to their peers, or if they're learning virtually, the idea is to present online with the class. And as you can see, I've chosen 3 different criterias: merging, developing, and mastery. And of course, this can be edited to your students' needs. If there's students who have different needs, then you can create others, and you can either omit 1 or 2 of the objectives and stick to whatever is important to your students.
Okay, all right.
Okay, sorry about that. Great. I'm just going to share my screen one more time. Okay, Great. So now that I've walked you through in this second part, to give you an idea of a bespoke lesson that you can create with your students. Now at the Expo School program and through our social media channels, our team has created short videos to actually help students and teachers get the idea, and you can find this on our social media page. But for now, allow me to show you the video on this project, Water from Air. Great, so you can find those on our...
Sonia, but sorry for the interruption, but I think the time is up and our next presenter is already in the queue waiting for its session to start. So do you like to wrap up the session?
Yes, I will, thank you. So we have other videos, other initiatives for different activities that we've prepared, especially during our summer for our Expo 2020 Summer Explorers, but you can find these on our social media channels, which you can see here on the screen. Please do share with us any of the initiatives that you take with your students regarding our learning resources, whether you use the learning resources as an entirety or if you take one or two elements, and of course if then you create a bespoke lesson like we've seen today. And remember that the information in each of the learning resources, whether it's for cycle 1, cycle 2, or cycle 3, again, this was just an example that we've shared with you here today. Do remember that it's rich in information and it leads you and your students to beautiful, wonderful places that we're all looking forward to, inshallah, in Expo 2020 Dubai. So the second part I wanted to say was, please do visit our learning resources, and you can download these, they're free. There's so many information and different cross-curricular activities you can use, whether it's for PE, design technology, computer science, even maths. You have for English, music and art, and business entrepreneurship. So it's very, very rich. Remember that each of these topics have subtopics in them, so it's just a question of research. And finally, to wrap up, very important, we will be celebrating Expo 2020 Dubai during Expo Week, which will happen from October 4th to October 8th. So please do stay tuned for more information when it comes to interacting with school communities. Thank you very much. I don't know, Miss, if there are going to be any questions.
Let's see in case if there is any question, just a sec. I think we are fine. There's no questions from the audience.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so
it's
much,
my pleasure.
our distinguished guests, for this presentation and for sharing this valuable expertise from your end. We hope that you gain the knowledge and are potentially able to apply it into the educational field. Finally, we would like to thank you for your presence and interaction and hope that you stay with us for the next session in which our guest